Welcome to Moments with Marianne. I am so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have a very informative show coming right up with special guest, Dr. Laurie Hollman, and she's here to share with us her two new books, The Busy Parent's Guide to Managing Anger in Children and Teens, and The Busy Parent's Guide to Managing Anxiety in Children and Teens. Dr. Laurie Hollman is a psychoanalyst specializing in modern parenting, child relationships, and she's an award-winning 3-time author. Widely published in hundreds of academic journals and popular media outlets, Dr. Laurie has taught post-grad courses at New York University and the Society for Psychoanalytic Study and Research, among other universities and institutes. So let's welcome to the show, Dr. Laurie Hollman.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
Oh, what a pleasure it is to have you here. And these books of yours are so resourceful. My goodness. The Busy Parent's Guide to Managing Anxiety and The Busy Parent's Guide to Managing Anger. I think every parent should have a copy of these.
Hopefully they will.
Well, and so why don't you share with us the inspiration behind writing these two books?
Sure. Actually, they are derived from my first book, which was called Unlocking Parental Intelligence, Finding Meaning in Your Child's Behavior. And that was a more general text that described parental intelligence. And so then we came up with the idea of writing short books that busy parents could read more quickly, focusing on anxiety and anger, which are the two big emotions that parents struggle with. And that's how we came upon these two books in a series.
Well, it seems that your book is so timely, and I know that your previous book, Unlocking Parental Intelligence, that was a Gold Mom's Choice Award winner. And so it's received lots of accolades. And, of course, people love that book. And these two books, dealing with anxiety and anger, it seems so timely because it seems like people are really dealing with that now more than ever.
Yeah, I think so. These are tense times in general for parents, and if they're tense for parents, they're going to be tense for kids.
Mm-hmm. So why don't we talk about the anxiety book for a moment? So what are some of the common things that you see in children and teens when dealing with anxiety?
Well, I could give you an illustration if that might help.
Yeah.
Okay, there are 5 steps to parental intelligence, and I'll give you an example of a mother who used them. Actually, this little girl is anxious and angry, so it kind of covers both books. Her name is Lydia, and she's 10 years old, and she comes home from school, and picture this. She's sitting at a kitchen table, drumming her fingers on her cheek, staring at her homework with papers scattered all around. She's clearly anxious about something, and she seems angry. The first step, however, is stepping back, which is what her mother does. She pauses and takes time to see if Lydia can gain control of herself on her own. She thinks about all the times she's seen Lydia anxious. This is not a new scenario. But she doesn't rush into solutions. She remains calm, which is essential, and non-judgmental of her daughter. Stepping back gives her permission as a parent to not know what to do immediately, because how can you know what to do and how to act before you understand the reasons behind the anxiety? So she goes to the second step, which is self-reflecting. And the mother has to think about her own feelings now for a moment, and she knows she is busy preparing dinner quickly so she can be relieved by her husband in a little while to go out to speak at a fundraiser that night. That's making her anxious, actually, and she realizes anxious mother, anxious daughter is not a good match. She has to contain her own anxiety, but recognizing it allows her to do that. Now she sees Lydia trembling and still distraught, so she decides it's time to step forward to the third step of parental intelligence, which is really the crux of parental intelligence. It's called understanding your child's mind. You're asking yourself, why is my child acting this way? So she sits with Lydia, puts her arm around her, and asks her, what's the matter? Something going wrong today? Very open-ended, non-judgmental questions. Now Lydia's going to help her mother know the meaning behind her anxiety and this apparent anger. Crying, she says she didn't make the first cut on the lacrosse team. This means to her not being in the popular crowd. Her mother asks her to tell her more. Again, an open-ended question. She says it means next year she won't make the travel team, and that's a way to get a scholarship to college. It feels so unfair, she says. I'm a good, loyal player on the team. Now her mother sees the meaning behind this anxiety and anger. She sees the social anxiety as part of the feeling she has about not getting on a team, first off, because to her that meant not being part of the popular kids. But she has another big erroneous conclusion, which is a worry about college. And developmentally, this is at least 7 years away. So she notes her anger is because she feels left out, and this feels unfair, but she decides to focus on the college issue because that seems to be so big. So Lydia's mother says, college, that's years away. You have a superb academic record and surely will by high school. Do you think we can try to take things one at a time? Next term, you can try out again. So Lydia's mother has now gone also to the next step of parental intelligence, step 4, understanding your child's development. She sees her daughter as a worrywart about the future, far beyond what a girl her age should be worried about. But it shows the competition and for achievement in athletics that exists today. So when Lydia is given her mother's reasonable perspective, she stops crying, hugs her mother, and says, I don't feel dizzy anymore. My chest stopped pounding. I thought I'd never feel better. With that, her mother knew that Lydia was actually on her way to a full-blown panic attack, which was stopped when her mother understood her mindset and gave her a new perspective. So now step 5, problem solving, was underway. The two decided she'd try again next term, and she settled down to do her homework. Her mother postponed talking about the social anxiety to another calmer time when they both would have actually more time. Her mother was greatly relieved because if she had not used her parental intelligence, when she began to leave for the fundraiser, Lydia's separation anxiety would be triggered. So in about 15 minutes, Lydia was calm, her mother felt relieved, and parental intelligence had averted a big, anxious, and angry crisis.
What a great example of being able to use all those steps. And I love how it illustrates how important, stepping back is, self-reflection. And why don't we expand on that a little bit more? When we talk about stepping back, why do we do that?
Okay. Usually it's a little counterintuitive for some parents who feel they have to give immediate consequences for actions. This is saying the opposite. You can't give an immediate consequence because you don't understand it yet. That's what parental intelligence is about, finding meaning in your child's behavior. So you become reflective, not reactive. And you just slow down. And it's so relieving for parents to realize they don't have to meet other parents' expectations and come up with some fast, magical solution right away. And when the child sees the parent calm down, they start to calm down. And that helps an anxious child or an angry child right off the bat.
Okay. Well, and sometimes if we have an anxious or angry parent, are the children picking up on that and kind of mirroring those
Yes,
those symptoms?
absolutely. That's why in Lydia's example, her mother was wise enough to realize that her own anxiety about speaking at a fundraiser had to be put on the back burner. She couldn't let that appear because her daughter was kind of contagious. If her daughter saw her mother was anxious about something, that would only increase her own anxiety.
Well, and for children that have panic attacks, how could parents use your books to help them with that?
Okay. Now, a panic attack usually doesn't occur in kids until about puberty. It does happen infrequently with lesser ages, but it's not as common. But again, the same rules apply, and that's why this 5 steps is helpful, because you always have something structured you can lean back on to use when a child is having a panic attack. Now, Lydia started to have a panic attack, but her mother slowed it down, because when she said she was getting dizzy and her chest was pounding, those are examples of a panic attack. So the best thing to do is, again, remain calm. You don't have to jump in right away. But you do want to tell a child if she's really aware, if the child has panic attacks often, they're aware of them. They know what they're into, so to speak. And the parent can remind them that getting afraid of the panic attack is going to increase the anxiety. Getting anxious about being anxious, in other words, increases the anxiety. So the mother can say, remember, anxiety goes away. It will only last a few minutes, hopefully a few minutes. Some children can last half an hour. But if you warn them that they're having an anxiety attack and that they should breathe nice and slowly and that the anxiety is just a feeling, they're not sick, they're not crazy, these are the things that the kids worry about, then it sort of slows the process down.
Mm-hmm. Kind of helps them get to a place where they're able to breathe and the parents are able to guide them through. Well,
Yes. There are some specific things that the parent can do if the child is kind of resilient enough to do them. If you cover your nose and your mouth with a paper bag, if it's handy, or just with your cupping your hands, you balance the carbon dioxide and the oxygen, and that lowers the emotional temperature and slows down the panic attack. So that helps a lot. Kids who are really prone to anxiety attacks often have a medication that they can take a tiny dose of that just slows the anxiety down so they can get back their reasoning and their cognitive skills. It's kind of like with an anxiety attack, your whole system of managing control of yourself breaks down, and you need help reconstituting yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So these are different avenues you can take. Slowing the breathing is a very big one. Also, telling the child to look around the room. It sounds kind of like, why bother to do that? But they're very internally focused, so you want to bring them into the external world and focus on what's real. So you say, remember, we're just in your room, and there's your lamp, and there's your desk, and there's your table. And the child starts looking around and gets out of that caught-in feeling of being inside their anxiety.
Yeah, they're able to kind of work through that. Well, and what a great resource, the Busy Parent's Guide to Managing Anxiety. Fabulous resource to help people kind of understand, because it gives so many examples and steps on what people should do, parents, and maybe they could be educators or, just people who are looking to help children that are, having to be daycare workers, you name it, that aren't really prepared to deal with these things.
Yeah. In fact, people have said that they would like me to write these books for teachers, because a child can be having an anxiety attack in the classroom, and suddenly just becomes really quiet and withdrawn. And if that's out of character for the child, the teacher is thrown off and doesn't know what to do. So the same steps apply. We could call it, unlocking teacher intelligence. They're really human relation life skills.
Mm-hmm. And be able to do that. Well, then, so let's talk about your other book, The Busy Parent's Guide to Managing Anger.
Yes.
So this book, these covers are great because, I think everyone's seen or has a child that has gone through these expressions and, or either lashing out or just, having temper tantrums. What are some of the things that you suggest for that?
Well, with a temper tantrum, you can expect that kids can have temper tantrums up till the age of about 3, mainly because they don't have the cognitive and verbal resources to explain what's wrong. So they act. They use action to express themselves. So that's important to know. I always, when parents come to me and say, my child's having temper tantrums, she's 2.5, and she's doing it all the time, every time I say no to something, she's such a bad kid, I immediately reframe that word bad and say, she's not bad, nobody's bad, you're not bad, the child's not bad, she's just distressed. And she doesn't know how to express the distress, so her body takes over and it's like a breakdown in the body. And so if you look at it that way, then the parent feels better about the child, and they don't view themselves as failing the child or the child as failing themselves. So that's the first move that I always take, is to reframe the feeling they have towards their child. Now, after age 3, temper tantrums are not normal because your child really should be able to regulate their emotions at that point. But they happen even in teenagers who regress at times. So there's no rule of thumb for exact ages when temper tantrums can occur.
So what are some healthy expressions of anger that you would expect to see then?
That's a very good question. I do write a chapter on healthy expressions of anger. It's important for parents, when their kids are little, start using feeling language, starting with happy, mad, sad, glad, and then as they get older, refining the language so that they know that anger can be simple annoyance all the way to rage, being livid, being furious. If you give the children language like this, then they can express how they feel, and they don't have to act it out. And that's the whole point. Anger is not a bad feeling. There's nothing wrong with anger. We have plenty of reasons to be angry at times. We just want to help our children explain what's making them angry so we can help them problem solve. So in a family where anger is allowed, it's a better dynamic than when anger is told, no, we don't do that here. Because then the child suppresses the anger, and it's going to come out in other ways that are unexpected. But talking about angry feelings is totally fine.
So you mentioned before that temper tantrums after the age of 3, is not really, they should be able to express themselves, is what is normally expected. And then when we talk about healthy expressions of anger, you've kind of gone through that. So what if we're still seeing a lot of outbursts, let's say temper tantrums past that age? Are there things that parents should be looking at to do differently? Is a child just really stressed and they need another way to express themselves? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it really depends on the child. There is a disorder called dysregulated emotions, kind of a mouthful. But these are children who have not incorporated limits somehow. Either the parents didn't know how, or they are prone to aggression, and they do not know how to slow themselves down to express themselves. With kids like this, it's very important that they learn critical skills. And what I try to explain to parents is it's not that your child is willful, it's that your child is not skillful. There are critical thinking skills that your child has a deficit in. One major one would be impulse control. So that child has trouble tolerating frustration, disappointment, disillusionment. They jump to conclusions, erroneous conclusions, very, very quickly. So you want to put them into a thinking mode instead of an acting mode. So it's important to talk to the child about the process, not only the problem at hand, and tell them, you're getting out of control, let me help you. I often suggest to parents that they use metaphors rather than anger. In other words, call it a stormy time or a hurricane, to speak of your hurricane, and say, it looks like you're feeling a stormy weather now inside of you. Let's see if we can calm down and bring the sun out. And so you, in a very non-judgmental way, address the actual problem, which is impulse control.
And that really allows the parents to kind of navigate through that, because I think a lot of times, parents, they probably are operating on not enough information or misinformation when it comes to children dealing with this, because I didn't know any of this stuff. I mean, I don't have children, but I had no idea that this is what happens.
Yeah. There's really a lot of knowledge to gain, and slowing down and learning what you need to know helps tremendously. And when the child sees that you're using your thinking abilities, they are going to model that and eventually learn they should be thinking, not acting. And that's what you want. You know, in nursery school, you often hear nursery school teachers say, now use your words, and that's exactly what we're talking about. We want it to be verbal, not physical. And this goes for teenagers, too. You know, it's a very competitive world right now with colleges. Kids are very ambitious. Their parents are very ambitious for them. And this is the season when they're filling out all these applications. And then in the spring, they get their acceptances or rejections through emails. And it's really very frightening for kids that on that email day. And some of them have real meltdowns when they don't get into the colleges they wanted or don't get into any colleges. That actually happens sometimes. So the parents need to be prepared for the tumultuous kind of experience that college acceptances have for kids.
Well, I think it's so important to have this information out there so parents kind of know where to go from point A, what's normal and what's expected. So what if we have children that, you know, their favorite word is they say no. It's like no, 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 no. What are some thoughts around that?
Okay. First, let's look at the toddler who says no, because that's when it first starts to happen. And instead of interpreting it as a defiant act, which it's not, it's really a growth-promoting act. To say no means to say, I have a mind of my own. I'm separate from you, Mommy. I can think one thing and you can think another. And that's tremendous that a child can learn to say no. You should really say to yourself, wow, I'm impressed. He said no to me. He knows he has a different thought than I do. That's a really differentiated, that's what the word is, child, who is getting emotionally separate from the parents. So saying no is a very positive experience. Kids who never say no are in trouble. They're not developing their autonomy. And then it recurs around puberty and early adolescence when the kids are separating again, only now they're separating and moving into their peer world. And they're going to say no. And again, it's not this heavy rebelliousness that parents think teenagers are going through. It's really a working towards an identity that has independence. So it's a positive thing. And if you can look at it that way, instead of looking at it as defiance and rebellion, you will be able to problem solve with your child and do the 5 steps and figure out what is it about saying no that bothers them so much? When they hear a no or when they say a no, what's the meaning behind their no? Don't just take it at face value, oh yes, and start arguing. Find out what it means. What is it about? Why are they saying no?
Mm-hmm. What's behind all of that? Well, and I know in your book you talk about, you know, when children are having, you know, like interpersonal issues and there's anger surrounding that. You know, what are some of the things that first parents can identify what's going on, what's really going on with their kids, and then how can they help their children get through that?
Well, this is going to happen at different stages. In elementary school is the beginning of when kids focus more on their peers rather than at home, and hopefully that is what they do. If they're too centered on an attachment to their parent, that's not healthy. You want them to be interested in school, in peer life, in companions, in buddies, and that kind of thing. The same thing when they're adolescents, you even more want them to have a social life and to view that as a positive thing that parents recognize. You know, parents affirm it. They are saying, this is great that you have friends, and they do what they can for it. Social anxiety is very common, though, and anger at feeling rejected is very common. And sometimes it kind of is like a whirlwind. It envelops the child. That's all they can think of. They might have 10 friends that they're close with, but one in particular rejects them, and they feel like they're a failure, they're a reject, they're a wimp. these are the words you hear the kids say. And it's important for the parents to give them perspective and normalize this, so you don't get along with gossipy so-and-so. But remember that Lara invited you over to a sleepover Saturday night. So you give them a sense of balance.
Well, I think that would be so important, especially when we look at today with kids with social media and how much gossip goes on there. Just to be able to regulate that must be really difficult.
It really is difficult in some communities. It has a geographic base somehow. I know that some kids in some schools don't seem to be troubled by it, and there are other schools that bullying actually occurs on Facebook. And it's very difficult for the child because it's so out of your control. You're so helpless to do anything about it. Because if you respond, you're just egging the person on. If you don't respond, you're better off, but you need a parent who's going to console you and let you know that just because someone called you a name or said you did something doesn't make it true. I always say to little kids, just because if I call you a porcupine, are you one? No, and they laugh and they giggle and they understand. The same thing is true when older kids, just because that person wrote this make-believe thing on Facebook doesn't mean it's true, and everybody knows that. There's this whole struggle now with what's fact and what's fiction, and kids are envious of each other, and they say horrible things about each other, and they really need parents who are solid, who will intervene if it's a school-wide problem, and even, depending on the age of the child, intervene by calling the parents. But the children who are bullied really need their parents' guidance.
Yeah, being able to have that parent kind of be more involved and see what's happening and take what actions are necessary.
Yeah. There are long-lasting results of feeling that you've been so rejected by your peers.
Mm-hmm. When it's just a post, It's, yeah. And I think when it comes back down, it's like, it's just a post.
Yeah, exactly. Or like with texting, kids they're in school. They're busy doing their work, supposedly. So if they don't text right back, it doesn't mean they rejected you. They're just doing something else. But in this time of social media, kids are getting so accustomed to immediate responses that it's causing a major problem because they have to be able to tolerate delay and waiting and frustration and not ascribe meaning to it. Just know that people are doing other things other than responding to you in that second, in that moment.
Yeah. Well, and so I think we'll kind of end this off on one of the last questions I have here. I had so many. There's no way we can cover them all. And, of course, our listeners will want to pick up their own copies of your books. But when we talk about, like, parent-child anger spiral, what is that? And what do we need to know about that?
Okay. The basic principle is do not yell at a yelling child. Mm-hmm. Because if your anger matches their anger or is even worse, then, like I said before, there's a contagious quality to it, and everything escalates, and suddenly you have this huge, unsettling emotion surrounding the family. And there are very aggressive families out there with lots of kids, and it's very important that the parent be the model of the calm, thinking, reasoning individual. If you're not in that space, if you really are overextended and busy and you've had a tumultuous day, tell the child, I'm not prepared to talk about it right now. Let's pick a time when we can talk and actually follow through and go at that time, do have a conversation. But if the parent is feeling out of control, it's not a time to try to help a child who's out of control.
That's such great advice, my goodness. Well, so Dr. Laurie, where can people connect with you and be part of your community and learn more about your books and all the great advice that you have?
Well, they're welcome to my website, which is very easy. It's Laurie, Laurie, Hollman, Hollman, PhD.com. And if you go there, you'll see a contact button that you can press, and that will allow you to send me a web message. And I get them now and then with questions and comments, and I often give my phone number, and we talk on the phone. But I'm very happy to receive that. There's also a lot of information about the books and endorsements of the books, so you can see what other people have felt about them. I also have a publication section. I've written really hundreds of articles for parents, and there's a way that you can click on the read button, and you'll get the article that'll pop right up, and you can read it. So all of those advantages go to that website. You're more than welcome to use it.
Oh, well, I found that you had lots of great information there for parents, caregivers, teachers. I'm not surprised that they want you to do a specific book for each category there, but these books were fabulous. And Dr. Laurie, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I enjoyed your questions because they were really spot on.
Well, thank you, Dr. Laurie. It has been such a pleasure to spend this time with you and, of course, to talk about your two new books, The Busy Parent's Guide to Managing Anger in Children and Teens and The Busy Parent's Guide to Managing Anxiety in Children and Teens. I know it's making such a huge impact and so widely popular. Again, if you'd like to connect with Dr. Laurie, you can at her website, lauriehollmanphd.com. Make sure to check out her website, be part of her community, and learn more about these two books and how they can not only be the perfect gift for this holiday season, but help change the lives of those around us. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Thursday, Friday, and Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Mountain Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.